oftentimes, like if they don't have the API key, you're not going to know that either, right? But you could work with them and say, okay, so how did you know we needed to use that API? Or which team has provided this to you? Or which team provided direction or whatever the case may be? And then you can talk to either the product owner or your manager or somebody else in another team that will have that information. So you are, as a Scrum Master, the problem solver, right? Not saying that you need to know, and I think this is where a lot of students or a lot of people get really nervous about being in this role because they're like, well, I don't know the organization. I'm new. I'm not going to have all the answers. And you're not expected to. You're expected to identify what is the blockage for a person on the team. And then you go and talk to other people in the organization to figure out how to remove this roadblock. So that's the key thing. So again, to summarize what I've said in the last 5 minutes or so, your daily stand-up will dictate what the rest of your day looks like, right? If nobody's got roadblocks or impediments, then you continue on in your daily, whatever you have planned for the day. If there are blockages or if there are impediments, then you work with the team member that's having that impediment or roadblock, and then you try to find out how to get answers for them. It could take you sending a whole bunch of emails. It could take you, calling a whole bunch of people. It could take that, many different ways of you trying to remove that roadblock. So that's your daily stand-up. Now, let's say that your team members don't have a lot of roadblocks. What should you as a Scrum Master be doing when the team is off coding or testing or whatever they're doing in their sprint cycle? You should be at this point working with the product owner, refining the product backlog, and schedule sprint backlog sessions, right? What are sprint backlog sessions? Sprint backlog sessions are where you look at your product backlog and you know which items are high priority. You should be scheduling sprint backlog sessions to gather requirements and to complete user stories so that way they could be taken into the next sprint planning session. So what does sprint backlog meetings look like? So they are either scheduled by the Scrum Master or the product owner, and they're meetings with our stakeholders oftentimes, or just with our product owner, depending on what functionality we're trying to define, right? And it includes some folks from our dev team. It may include some folks from our testing team. And it's a way for us, okay, I'll write there. And it's a way for us to gather information, gather requirements, which you don't often hear in the Scrum framework, which kind of boggles my mind, but it's a way for us to have information to write complete user stories, right? Because only complete user stories, right, can make it to the next sprint planning session. So while, let's say, to summarize, your team's off working, they're doing their thing, and you've done an exceptional job of either removing the roadblocks or you're in the process of getting answers for them, you're going to be focused on sprint backlog sessions, which is to gather requirements and to continue refining user stories, right? So that we can take them into the next sprint planning session. So this happens throughout the duration of your sprint. So it could be if your sprint cycle is 2 weeks, then you're doing this process while in your downtime, making sure that you could pull your dev teams, not the entire dev team, but one like person from your dev team, QA, your stakeholders, your product owner in refining the user stories. Okay, so now at this point, let's say you're finishing or closing up at the end of the sprint. This is where you're going to schedule a sprint review or a sprint demo with your product owner, stakeholders, your agile team. In the sprint review or sprint demo, those words are used interchangeably, is where the team is providing or showcasing what we've done in that 2 or 4 week sprint cycle, whatever frequency you have. And in that sprint cycle, you will gather feedback, right, on what your stakeholders or your product owner thinks. What At that point, what we do is we gather the feedback. If it's ready for us to um, park for a release, we do that. If we have additional feedback, that feedback can be gathered in the form of user stories, high-level user stories, and it goes back into the product backlog, right? Or we gather feedback, like let's say there's minor things that need to be updated. We take that feedback and we park it into our next sprint backlog. Okay, so depending on how and what the project team wants to do, the feedback could end up in two places, right? Two places, product backlog or the sprint backlog. So that's what your role is going to be as a Scrum Master during the sprint review or the sprint demo. And then we have something called a sprint retrospective. This is us reflecting on how we did as a team during the past sprint. And this is where we talk about things that went well and things that didn't go well. Your role as a Scrum Master in this um, ceremony is to work with the team, identify what things we're going to fix or what things we're going to improve upon for the upcoming sprint. So this is mostly just coordination and identifying what things we're going to focus on. Okay. So now I'm going to jump back into the start of the following sprint, right? Which begins, as you may know, with sprint planning. So in sprint planning, this is a time where we as a team look at complete user stories, right? How do we get to complete user stories? Through sprint backlog. This is what I was talking about earlier because it's a cycle, right? It's a iterative cycle. And so in sprint planning, as a Scrum Master, it is your responsibility to make sure that we only pull in user stories that are ready, right? We follow the INVEST acronym that talks about what are the criterias or what are the characteristics of a user story that can be taken into sprint planning, and that's the definition of ready. And so therefore, as a Scrum Master, let's say there are let's say, I'll just make this up, 15 user stories that we know are high priority, functionality that's high priority. And from those 15 user stories, about 11 of them meet the definition of ready and the criteria of invest. And those are the ones that are now taken into sprint planning. We, as a Scrum Master, you'll work on identifying a sprint goal. And from there, you'll work with the team to size them. Your dev teams will size these, and we as a team will decide how many of the 11 that were ready, how many of those meet the definition, not meet the sprint goal. So let's say if our sprint goal is to complete registration, out of those 11, maybe 10 of them meet the goal that we have for the sprint. And after sizing those user stories, your dev teams will size them. We then identify how many can we put into our sprint. How many user stories do we as a project team feel that we can take? And this is where Scrum Masters will use the team velocity to help them figure out how many user stories can the team take on comfortably and how many user stories based on the skill set that we have on the team makes sense. So this is more of in sprint planning is more of a negotiation, more of the team coming together to figure out what can we as a team commit to, and whatever we as a team can commit to based on the goal that we have, based on team velocity, can we then put those user stories into the sprint backlog? And once we're in the sprint backlog and the sprint starts, then we start the cycle again. And that's where you begin the whole cycle all over again. So this is the way what you can expect as a Scrum Master when you do land in this role. Let me know if you guys have any more questions or if there's any. I honestly, you guys, I read all of my comments. If there's topics that you want to learn about or know more about or want me to go into detail about, let me know. I use your comments as my content source. So as I said, I read them. I hope this explanation of the day-to-day life of a Scrum Master is super helpful for you. And as I said a little bit earlier, leave comments. If you thought if you thought that I did a good job, let me know. If you think that there's other areas that I need to go deeper in, let me know as well. I've done these roles. So it's really easy for me to just kind of maybe skip over some things that may not make sense. So I welcome all feedback. Feel free to leave me comments. And I hope you find this helpful. So let me know if this was a little bit easier for you to understand and digest the role of the day-to-day role of a Scrum Master. Okay. And with that, I'm going to take off for now. Hope you guys have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, weekend, wherever you are, depending on your time zone when you watch this. And with that said, thank you so much again for showing me and my channel and my content so much love. I appreciate you guys all so much. And I'm forever grateful to be able to give back in this capacity. So thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone.